Okay, so I'm going to show you how to mix your icing consistencies. I'm going to start with 2 different colors, one just being white, one being pink. And we're going to start with a bowl. I use popsicle sticks to mix. You can use a spoon, you can use a spatula, it doesn't matter. You're going to put some of your pre-made icing into a bowl. Mine's very thick, but I'm going to show you how to fix that. I'm going to need a good amount. Obviously, estimate how much you're going to need for your cookies. And put that much in the bowl. This is going to be used for both your piping consistency and flooding consistency. So keep that in mind as well. I think that should be good. You always need more white than you think. Smooth. So now I just use a bottle of water to add a tiny bit of water even to my piping consistency. So now your piping consistency is what you're going to use in a piping bag to do things like words or the outline on the cookie. That's considered piping, and it's going to be your thicker consistency. However, this is a little too thick, so that's why I'm adding a little bit of water. And then your flooding consistency is what you use for big areas that you want to fill with icing. That's going to be more of a liquidy consistency, which I'll show you as well. So this looks good for a piping. You don't want it too thin because you want it to hold its shape. And things like flowers or words or any little details will be done with this consistency. So now this is where I would add my food coloring if I were coloring this one, which I'll do next. But this one's just going to be white. No matter what design you're doing, you usually will probably need a white. More often than not, also a black, especially if there's eyes involved. So now I'm going to show you how to prep your icing bag. So now I use Wilton. You can use any type of icing bag that you find. And you need a coupler. So this is a coupler along with that. And I'm going to use a number 3 icing tip, which is just slightly bigger than a 1 or a 2 round tip. So I start with this piece of coupler, put it in the bag, push it to the bottom, and now here you can cut the tip with a pair of scissors, just about where you think it'll push to, so like there. You push this up, you can see that the bag comes just to the end there, and that's perfect. I'm going to put the tip right over that, and the other end of the coupler, and screw that on. Okay, then I use just a plastic cup, like any kind of, this is all icing in mine still. Any kind of cup. I put the bag in it, tip first, and flip the end around it. And then I'm going to put my piping consistency icing into that bag. I'm going to do about half of what I've just mixed. Maybe a little less. You always need more flooding than piping, so I think that's good. I still have that much left. I'll do a tiny bit more. Okay. So then for the bag, you just unzip it. I like to push the icing to the bottom. And you've got your first bag of icing done. I also have that I like to use to keep, because sometimes this stuff in the back here, this little bit here, will dry out and get crumbly and crusty, so I use these bag ties. You could also just use like a plastic band or something, I'm sure. And these just wrap around and keep all the icing from drying out. So that's one color. And then now we're going to take this, the same bowl we were just working with. I'm going to add more water. We're going to make a flooding consistency now. So I'm going to start with a little bit. You could always add more. Can't take it out though, so always start with a little bit at a time. Now, there are multiple consistencies of flooding ice you can use. There's one called a 20-second. That means that when you go like that, it's going to take 20 seconds for it to come back together and smooth out. This seems to be a little bit thicker than a 20-second right now. However, I like to use just regular piping and flooding, so the regular flooding is a lot thinner than the 20-second. Some people use just 20-second to outline and flood. However, I can't seem to get it to not fall off the cookie that way. So that's about a 20-second right there, which means I'm going to add a little bit more of water. So a little at a time, because you could always add more, but you can't take it out. So now I want it to be thin enough that it'll flow easily through my bottle, which I'm going to show you in a second, but not too thin that it's going to be like water, because then that will flow right over your piped edges and off of your cookie. Okay, this I think is a good consistency. It goes right back into itself when I make a line through it. You can see any of these drips will go right back into itself and smooth out on its own. That's what you're looking for. So now I use these Wilton bottles. You really don't even need a bottle. You can use another bag, like just a piping bag without a tip in it, and just cut the ends. I just find that these are a lot neater to use, so I'm going to show you that. You can see too already there's getting a little bit of bubbles in here. That's something that when you put it on the cookie, you're going to want to make sure you pop, or else it's going to dry like that with these bumps. Alright. So now I'm going to carefully pour this in. This isn't always the neatest process. Obviously use all your icing, fill up your bottle, but for the sake of time I'm going to just show you this much for now, and hopefully like make less of a mess of your bottle. But so that's two consistencies, piping and flooding. Yeah, again, you want to, when you're doing a color, you want to mix that in first before you do either consistency, so that your piping and flooding are exactly the same color. If you add a little bit of water, it's not going to change the color of it at all, so that's the best way to have them, your edges match your inside. So yeah.